Iceland.
Iceland. Table of contents.
All about Iceland, including Reykjavík, with visiting and touring information, geography, history, attractions, and other points of interest.
Dr. Sydney Soclof. drsydney22@gmail.com. 2023. Narration by Dr. Sydney Soclof,
Zoe Phonemes,
and Nathan Koltove. For a more complete discussion of YouTube navigation, please go to this video using the link here. Iceland, land of fire and ice. This is the flag of Iceland. We note the similarity in the design to the flags of other Scandinavian countries. Recommended video, Icelandic National Anthem Lofsungur.
This is the Iceland National Anthem. This will give you an idea of the Icelandic language. This is the Iceland National Anthem.
This is the Iceland National Anthem. In the Icelandic language, Iceland is spelled like this.
Where's Iceland?
Iceland is in the North Atlantic Ocean, and not close to any large continental land masses.
Iceland is located just south of the Arctic Circle, about 180 miles, 290 kilometers, from Greenland. 620 miles, 1,000 kilometers, west of Norway. And 500 miles, 800 kilometers, northwest of Scotland.
Iceland is located on major shipping and air lanes of the North Atlantic Ocean. Iceland occupies a unique position in the world as one of the first independent, democratic republics.
Iceland, with its strategic location between Greenland and Europe, is the westernmost European country, and Reykjavík is the northernmost national capital in the world.
Iceland is the second largest island in the North Atlantic Ocean, the largest by far being Greenland.
Iceland lies between 63 degrees and 66.5 degrees north latitude, and the most northerly parts of the island are just touching the Arctic Circle.
Being so far north, Iceland experiences very short days in the winter and very long days in the summer. In mid-June, sunrise is 3 a.m. and sunset is at midnight in Reykjavík. At the other extreme, on December 21st, sunrise is not until 11:20 a.m. and sunset is in the mid-afternoon at 3:30 p.m.
Iceland is entirely volcanic and, being located on the mid-Atlantic ridge, is being pulled apart at the rate of 1 centimeter per year. Much more about that a little bit later.
Over 80% of the island is unpopulated because the land is covered either with permanent snow and ice fields, glaciers, or has a volcanic surface, with poor soils that are not suited to crop growing, sheep grazing, or other agricultural activities.
Iceland is just slightly larger than the U.S. state of Oregon in total land area.
By comparison, in Europe, Iceland is just slightly larger than Hungary or Portugal. Iceland is the least densely populated country in Europe.
Here is a population density comparison of the Nordic countries, showing Iceland as being by far the least densely populated.
Here the US, UK, and the Netherlands have been added in for comparison.
Iceland is one of the world's smaller nations with a population of about 310,000.
More than 50% of the people live in or near the capital city of Reykjavík in the extreme southwestern portion of the island.
A full 94% of the nation's inhabitants live in urban areas, localities with populations greater than 200, and about 63%, live in the Reykjavík metropolitan area.
Most Icelanders are descendants of Norwegian settlers and Celts from the British Isles, and the population is remarkably homogeneous.
Other major population centers are Akureyri, on the north-central coast, and Selfoss, in the southern lowlands.
The only city of substantial size in Iceland is the capital Reykjavík with about 110,000 population. The other cities are no more than 30,000 population.
An important cruise port in Iceland is Akureyri with a population of just 18,000.
Is Iceland covered with ice?
This is Iceland in midwinter. We see that it is indeed almost all covered with ice or snow. Iceland, January 29, 2004. Source: NASA.
But this is Iceland in midsummer. Summer temperatures melt snow and ice on much of Iceland's surface. The lack of uniform snow cover allows the permanent, though shrinking, ice fields and glaciers to show through, particularly the Vatnajökull Glacier in the southeast.
Iceland has more land covered by glaciers than all of continental Europe.
Well then, is Greenland not really green?
In the year 982, Erik the Red, a Norwegian, sailed to Greenland from Iceland and founded a new colony.
Erik landed on the coast of the southern tip of Greenland and gave the island its name.
He called the frozen wasteland Greenland to entice settlers to go from Iceland to Greenland. Note that whereas Greenland is almost entirely covered with snow and ice, Iceland is almost entirely ice-free.
This was perhaps the greatest real estate scam in history.
This is Greenland in midsummer. We see that virtually all of it, except for a few small spots along the coast in the south, are covered with snow and ice.
And here is a space shuttle image of the southern coast of Greenland.
There are some spots in the south along the coast not covered with snow or ice in midsummer, but even there is little that is green.
What time is it in Iceland?
Here are the standard time zones of the world. The reference time is Greenwich Mean Time, now also referred to as Coordinated Time Universal or UTC, which is the time zone of Greenwich at the zero meridian in the UK.
Although Iceland is several hundred miles west of the UK, it is in the same time zone.
We see that Iceland, the UK, Ireland and Portugal are all in the GMT time zone. Iceland does not have daylight savings time, so it will be 1 hour behind London on BST, British Summer Time.
Now we will look at the formation of Iceland, a land of fire and ice, and the newest land on Earth, and still growing.
The Earth's core is very hot molten magma.
This shows a crack in the Earth's crust.
Molten magma, now called lava, flows out of the crack in the Earth's crust.
The solidified lava makes new land.
The new land will be an island in the middle of the ocean.
To understand Iceland, we must first look at the mid-Atlantic ridge, which is the outstanding feature of the floor of the Atlantic Ocean.
The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is an immense submarine mountain range extending throughout the length of the Atlantic, occupying the center third of the ocean bed, and reaching 1,000 miles in width. Although of tremendous proportions, this is just the Atlantic portion of an oceanic ridge that encircles the world.
The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is like a submerged mountain range that extends through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, almost from pole to pole.
It is a submerged fault line that runs for some 10,000 miles from beneath the northern ice cap southwards, and turns east around the southern tip of Africa to meet with the Indian Ocean ridge.
This is where several plates of the Earth's crust meet: the North American Plate, South American Plate, Eurasian Plate, and the African Plate.
Here is a cross-sectional view of the Atlantic Ocean showing the Mid-Atlantic Ridge.
The continents are floating on plates of the Earth's crust called tectonic plates.
What are these tectonic plates?
Closer to the very center of the Earth is a spherical core under such extremely high pressure that it remains solid. This is the inner core of the Earth, made of nickel and iron.
Further out, but still very deep within the Earth, is an extremely hot molten material called magma.
Further out is the mantle, a hot semi-liquid layer.
On the Earth's surface is the solid crust, part of which is land and most is covered by the oceans. The Earth's crust is floating on the semi-liquid mantle.
The Earth's crust is not continuous but broken into several pieces or plates.
These pieces or plates of the Earth's crust are called tectonic plates.
The Earth's crust is not continuous, but broken into a number of pieces or plates.
These pieces or plates of the Earth's crust are called tectonic plates.
This shows the various tectonic plates of the Earth. They are in a variety of sizes and shapes.
The tectonic plates are moving slowly with respect to each other, typically a few centimeters per year.
This liquid magma is under extremely high pressure and flows up to the surface of the Earth through cracks or weak spots in the Earth's crust.
Hot plumes of the molten magma spurt up through cracks in the Earth's crust and form volcanoes.
The molten magma spurts up through cracks and becomes lava.
These volcanoes occur on land, but even more often deep under the oceans, where they usually escape any notice at all.
This shows a plume of molten magma going up through a crack or weak spot in the mantle and crust of the Earth. When the magma reaches the surface, it is now called lava. The lava flow that results cools and solidifies on the ocean floor, forming a submarine mountain.
This shows the resulting submarine mountain after this volcano has become dormant.
In this case, the volcano rises above sea level, forming an island.
This shows the resulting island after this volcano has become dormant.
Some plates are separating or diverging, such as those that meet in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean,
as shown here, where the North American and Eurasian plates are separating, as are the South American and African plates.
As the plates spread apart, molten magma wells up and becomes a lava flow. The result is a submarine mountain.
Since this also happens all along the length where the plates separate, the result is a submarine ridge.
This shows a submarine ridge, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge.
As the ocean bed tectonic plates are pulling apart, molten volcanic material or magma in the form of lava flows up through the cracks and forms volcanoes. The lava spreads out and solidifies and forms an underwater ridge or mountain range.
In some places, the mountains reach above sea level and new islands are born.
In the mid-Atlantic, on the ocean bed, tectonic plates are pulling apart. The gap between the plates is filled by molten volcanic material that rises from the Earth's mantle and continuously forms new oceanic crust. This extrusion wells up and forms a ridge, and the seafloor spreads. These mid-ocean ridges occur beneath all our major oceans.
As the ocean bed tectonic plates are pulling apart, Molten volcanic material or magma in the form of lava flows up through the cracks and forms volcanoes. The lava spreads out and solidifies and forms new islands.
This animation loop shows how lava from the Earth's core comes up through a crack in the Earth's crust or mantle to form a volcano and produce a new land mass in the ocean.
Whereas the depths in the Atlantic Ocean are generally down to 20,000 feet. The mid-Atlantic ridge has a depth usually less than 5,000 feet, and in some places reaches close to just a few hundred feet.
And in some places the mid-Atlantic ridge reaches above sea level. The Azores, Ascension, and St. Helena Islands, which are all volcanic, rise from it.
Toward the northern end of the mid-Atlantic ridge is Iceland, the largest land made from oceanic crust, and further south are the Azores.
Here is the northern part of the mid-Atlantic ridge.
And here is the part of the mid-Atlantic ridge near the equator.
Here again is the full extent of the mid-Atlantic ridge.
The Azores in the mid-Atlantic is located near the place where the North American, African, and Eurasian plates meet.
Iceland rises from the crest of the mid-Atlantic ridge, which passes straight under the island. It is one of the newest lands on the Earth.
The mid-Atlantic ridge is the boundary between two tectonic plates of the Earth's crust, the North American plate and the Eurasian plate.
Here is the mid-Atlantic ridge passing through Iceland.
These two plates are pulling apart, and lava from the molten magma of the Earth's core flows up through the cracks, forming new land.
Iceland was formed by molten lava flowing up through cracks on the mid-Atlantic ridge. It is one of the newest lands on the Earth.
The mid-Atlantic ridge passes right through the middle of Iceland, producing active volcanoes. The mid-Atlantic ridge is deep under the ocean for most of its length, but is exposed at the surface in Iceland.
Here is an amazing picture. The ridge manifests itself very strikingly at Thingvellir in Iceland. Along this road you can see the mid-Atlantic ridge pulling the island apart. Eventually, Iceland may become two separate islands.
Later, we'll talk about this Icelandic letter here that is called a thorn.
On the right side are the rocks headed for Europe, and on the left to North America.
The gap increases at a rate of about 6 feet, 2 meters, per year.
Iceland's most historic site and national shrine is the Thingvellir National Park.
Here at Thingvellir, the oldest existing parliament in the world first met in the year 930 and continued to meet until 1798. The Althing, an open-air assembly, represented all of Iceland and met here every year to enact laws. In the year 1000 a law was passed to introduce Christianity to the island.
Thingvellir, Icelandic Thing, Parliament, and Vellir, Plains, is one of the most important places in Icelandic history. In the year 930, the Althing, one of the oldest parliamentary institutions of the world, was founded.
The Althing met yearly, where the law speaker recited the law to all of the gathered people and decided disputes as well. In the year 1000 the law speaker Thorgils Jósvetningur made Christianity the official religion of Iceland. After the conversion, it is said that, upon returning from the Althing, Thorgils then threw his statues of the Old Norse gods into the waterfall that is now named Godafoss, waterfall of the gods.
Thingvellir is Iceland's first site on the World Heritage List. At this historical place, the independence of the Republic of Iceland was proclaimed on June 17, 1944.
Thingvellir is only a few miles from Reykjavík.
Thingvellir has been a national park since 1928 because of its special tectonic and volcanic environment.
The continental drift can be clearly seen in the cracks or faults which traverse the region.
This also causes measurable earthquakes in the area.
Chapter 5. Volcanoes.
There are several active volcanoes in the region where the mid-Atlantic ridge passes through Iceland.
Here are volcanoes near Borgarnes in western Iceland.
Active volcanoes, such as the 4,900-foot, 1,500-meter, Hekla, erupt occasionally and sometimes cause considerable damage.
Eyjafjallajökull, elevation 1,666 meters, erupted in 2010, sending ash high into the atmosphere and seriously disrupting European air traffic. The eruption also caused significant damage to nearby villages.
Scientists continue to monitor nearby Katla, elevation 1,512 meters, which has a high probability of eruption in the very near future, potentially disrupting air traffic.
Iceland is still being formed. The volcanic island of Surtsey off the southern coast was formed by eruptions that began in 1963.
Here is an Icelandic postage stamp commemorating the formation of the island of Surtsey.
In addition to volcanoes, there is much geothermal activity, including numerous geysers.
Iceland has more hot springs and solfataras, which are volcanic vents that emit hot gases and vapors, than any other country.
Indeed. The very word geyser itself comes from the name of a hot spring or geyser in Iceland.
The many geysers or hot springs are formed when water comes into contact with lava-heated rocks. The steam or hot water is used to heat homes and buildings as well as greenhouses, which produce flowers and vegetables.
Geothermal energy heats all of Reykjavík and several other communities. It provides all the hot water needs of Reykjavík. Imagine no hot water heaters and no hot water bills.
Geothermal energy also provides steam for industrial energy
and is used in commercial vegetable farming and greenhouses.
72% of all energy used in Iceland is produced from its own resources. 54% comes from geothermal energy, and 18% is from hydroelectric production.
Although the country is called Iceland, only 11% of it is covered by permanent ice caps.
The ice caps are on the extensive lava plateaus, from which many glaciers move outward toward the sea.
The coastline and much of the interior has rugged mountains, except for the plains area near Reykjavík in the southwest.
Hvalshnúkur along the southern coast is the highest peak on Iceland, at 6,952 feet, or 2,119 meters.
The irregular coastline of Iceland is indented by many fjords and bays except in the southwest.
The climate of Iceland.
Will it be cold? Or will it be very cold in Iceland?
Iceland is in the far north at about 65 degrees north latitude. It is just below the Arctic Circle, which is at a latitude of 66.5 degrees. Reykjavík, at a latitude of 64 degrees, is the most northerly capital in the world. It might be expected, therefore, that Iceland would have an extremely cold climate.
This is not the case. However, because of the moderating effect of the ocean currents, and in particular the relatively warm North Atlantic Drift or Gulf Stream that bathes the southern and western coasts, The Gulf Stream originates in the warm waters of the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico.
The Gulf Stream then flows northwestward along the coast of the United States and then further eastward in the Atlantic Ocean.
The North Atlantic Drift is a continuation of the Gulf Stream and flows northwestward toward northern Europe and Scandinavia.
The warm waters of the Gulf Stream keep the temperatures of Iceland, the UK and Scandinavia much warmer than would otherwise be the case.
We see here again the North Atlantic Drift that flows northwestward toward northern Europe and Scandinavia.
These are temperatures in July in the region of Iceland. We see the moderating effect of the North Atlantic Drift.
These are temperatures in January in the region of Iceland. We again see the moderating effect of the North Atlantic Drift.
These are temperatures in January in the Northern Hemisphere. We see the moderating effect of the North Atlantic Drift.
These are temperatures in July in the Northern Hemisphere. We again see the moderating effect of the North Atlantic Drift.
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year in Reykjavík. We see that the midday highs will be in the low 50s. Overnight in Reykjavík, it drops down to a chilly low to mid-40s late at night and in the early morning hours.
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Celsius throughout the year in Reykjavík, where we see highs of about 11 degrees Celsius and lows down to 6 degrees.
Here is the average monthly rainfall in inches throughout the year in Reykjavík.
May and June are the least rainy months of the year. But nevertheless our prediction is that it might rain. Or it might not.
When the relatively warm Gulf Stream waters and humid air that accompanies it meets the frigid air of the Arctic region, the warmer humid air rises and clouds and precipitation result.
The average annual precipitation varies from 40 to 60 inches, 1,000 to 1,500 millimeters, in the populated Southwest. Extremes range from less than 20 inches, 500 millimeters, in the north to about 120 inches, 3,000 millimeters, in the highlands.
This is somewhat like the west coasts of Scotland and Ireland, and even the Washington and Oregon coasts of the U.S.
The lava soils, climate, and poor drainage conditions are not favorable to tree growth. Most of the lower parts of the island were covered with trees that were either burned off by early settlers, cut for timber, or killed by sheep.
About 79% of Iceland's land area, which is of recent volcanic origin, consists of glaciers, lakes, a mountainous lava desert and other wasteland. About 28% of the land is used for grazing, and only 1% is cultivated.
The inhabited areas are on the coast, particularly in the southwest where about 60% of the population lives. Because of the Gulf Stream's moderating influence, the climate is characterized by damp, cool summers and relatively mild but windy winters.
The present vegetation consists of cotton grass and other sedges and rushes in the marshy areas.
There are small, forested areas consisting of dwarf willows, birches and mountain ash. There is grass, moss and lichens in the coastal valleys, the plains of the southwest, and the lower elevation lava plateaus.
About 100 species of birds, including many types of waterfowl, inhabit the island.
The fox is the only native four-legged animal.
The reindeer was introduced from Norway about 1770.
Whales and seals are found along the coast. Trout and salmon inhabit the inland lakes and streams.
And several commercial fish species are in the surrounding waters. Especially numerous are herring and cod.
Now, we will have a brief look at the history of Iceland.
Iceland's first inhabitants were thought to be Irish monks, who regarded the island as a sort of hermitage until the early 9th century.
Iceland was founded more than 1,000 years ago, during the Viking Age of exploration, and settled by a mixed Norse and Celtic population.
The origin of the word Viking is not certain. One theory is that the Vikings, burning, plundering and killing, earned their name Vikingur, meaning pirate in the early Scandinavian languages.
Another theory is that the name Viking comes from the Old Norse word vik for bay or harbor. There are many place names with vik in Iceland, including Reykjavík. These are the travels of the Vikings from their Scandinavian homelands in the 9th through the 12th centuries.
Norwegians colonized parts of the British Isles, the Faroe Islands, and Iceland. They arrived in Iceland in 874. From Iceland, the Vikings pushed on to Greenland and the coasts of Labrador and Newfoundland.
Although Irish monks established early isolated settlements in Iceland, the Norwegians arriving from the year 874 were primarily responsible for the island's continuous occupation and population growth.
This early settlement of Norwegian seafarers and adventurers in Iceland led to further excursions to Greenland and the coast of North America, which the Norse called Vinland.
These are Vikings landing from their longboats.
A representative form of government was established in the year 930 at Thingvellir, with the Althing as the deliberating body. The Althing is the national parliament, literally, the Althing, or General Assembly, of Iceland.
Even after Iceland's union with Norway in 1262, the Althing still held its sessions at Thingvellir until 1799, when it was discontinued for 45 years. It was restored in 1844 and moved to Reykjavík, where it has resided ever since. The present Parliament building, the Althing's hus, was built in 1881, of hewn Icelandic stone.
Around the year 1000, Norwegian missionaries introduced Christianity, which was adopted as the state religion in 1262. The Althing voted that Iceland should come under the rule of Norway.
In 1380, Iceland and Norway were taken over by Denmark.
Iceland experienced very difficult and troubling time from the 15th century to well into the 18th century. This was due in part to severe trade restrictions imposed by Denmark and partially by internal strife. Nature also played a role due to a series of severely cold winters, failures of fisheries, and epidemics of diseases.
Particularly devastating were volcanic eruptions and earthquakes in the period of 1618 to 1693, and then again in 1727 to 1783. In 1783, the eruption of Reykjavík is regarded as the worst in world history, scattering ash over all of the world. As a result of the lingering smoke and haze, there were crop failures and famine. It is estimated that up to 1/3 of Iceland's population died because of this volcano and its aftermath.
Fallout from the volcano of 1875 devastated the Icelandic economy and caused widespread famine. Over the next quarter century, 20% of the island's population emigrated, mostly to Canada and the U.S.
When Norway was separated from Denmark in 1814, Iceland remained a Danish possession. Home rule was obtained in 1904. Iceland became self-governing in 1918 but still was a protectorate of Denmark. In 1944, Iceland proclaimed itself an independent republic.
The island was occupied by British and then American troops during World War II to prevent German entry after the Germans had occupied Denmark. The American forces were withdrawn in 1946.
Iceland became a member of the NATO Defense Plan in 1949, and American troops returned in 1951. Membership in NATO is especially important because Iceland has neither an army nor a navy. An American airbase operates at Keflavik in southwestern Iceland.
Iceland has endured many difficult periods.
In the 1400s, a plague reportedly killed a large percentage of the population. Volcanoes caused much destruction in Iceland in the 1600s and 1700s. In 1973, a volcanic eruption on the island of Reykjavík necessitated the evacuation of 5,000 people.
Despite many problems, Iceland maintained a high level of economic development through the 1970s.
In the 1980s, Iceland was set back somewhat by a recession, due mainly to a decrease in the fish catch.
Vigdís Finnbogadóttir was elected president in 1980. She became the world's first elected woman president. She was re-elected in 1984, and again in 1988.
Worldwide attention was focused on Iceland in October 1986 when the country hosted arms reduction talks between United States President Ronald Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in Reykjavík.
Pope John Paul II visited Iceland in June 1989. It was the first visit ever by a pope to this largely Lutheran country.
This is Reykjavík. Iceland, Table of Contents.
Thanks for watching. Please watch some more of my great videos.